We are live streaming, I'm just letting you know. The minute I start talking, I think they click the sound on. Supposedly it keeps running after, and supposedly they click the sound off, but I'm just saying, careful what you say, that's all I'm just saying. You know?
Say all the nasty stuff you want.
You don't want a Nancy Kerrigan Disney moment, okay? You don't want that. So, you don't know that? Anyway. Welcome, everyone. I'm Simone Nelson from the California State University's Entertainment Alliance. This panel is a little different than what's in the printed program. There are no HR directors here. You might have figured it out. It's correct, listed online. Just give it, you may leave if you want an HR director. Also, what if everybody gets
See ya.
leaves?
Thanks for coming.
Sorry.
Not as
That's
advertised.
awkward timing, yeah.
She's getting water.
Yeah, as you can see, this is going to be one of those panels. I'm not one for the more dry, unentertaining, and these people will be none of the above. If you looked at your bios, I'm not going to give an in-depth description of them, but I want to thank Victor Harward for working with us, the California State University system, to develop, it's the first ever inaugural education summit on entertainment and technology, and he's an amazing man who has let us bring the world of entertainment to higher education, the largest public university system in the country, actually, with the most entertainment studies programs. And nobody's done this before. And we're proud to do this and bring these people. Do we have any students in the audience? Thank you for being here. There's a lot of you guys also streaming. 23 campuses across the state of California, all the way up to Humboldt. It's not easy for everybody to come to LA for something like this. And I will leave a lot of room for questions because it's really for you guys that we're here. I'm excited for this opportunity to further our mission, bringing the industry to students and campuses and vice versa. The actual title, if you haven't been online, is Working in the Industry, an in-depth discussion with executives and creatives from TV, film, and technology. So, again, if that's not what you're here for, if this is not your plane to Cincinnati, you can leave now. I'm thrilled to be here moderating these extremely talented folks working in different aspects of the industry. And just a heads up that Robert Ramirez, who was listed both, I think, in the program and online, he's from Netflix. He couldn't join us today. In his words, this is a quote, originals, originals, originals. So you can see where Netflix is going just by that. Most of these people I know and have personally worked with in the past. I thank them so much for coming here. I was not that pushy. You know I wasn't. You were very thoughtful.
She was that pushy.
I was not. Yes. I was not. I'm going to ask them a bit about themselves, but if anyone watching in our live stream to the 23 campuses and beyond, anybody can watch the live stream. Their full bios are listed, so we don't have to go in depth there. We have today Shannon Flynn right here. She's a television director working at Nickelodeon, Disney, ABC, right? And lots of other, she does a lot of children's sitcoms and other things. How would you describe what you do?
I started in children's television, and now I'm thankfully working away from children's television
I didn't say
and
anything.
into.
She said
No,
that.
it's been my bread and butter for about 10 years now, but
Yeah.
things are looking up.
You started on a kind of an unknown program.
A little tiny.
Well, yeah, a little thing. I was like, what are you working on? How long ago was that?
10 years ago.
What was it called? It has a weird name.
Hannah Montana.
Oh yeah, that. She also was the kids' acting coach, so I'm sure she has some interesting stories there. You can corner
I'll just
her.
start off by saying Miley is one of the nicest people in the whole world, despite what you might read in the media. She has a huge heart, and she's an amazing woman.
So she's not a wrecking ball.
She's not.
Okay, good. Next to Shannon, we have John Reese, who is a fabulous filmmaker, producer, author, digital strategist, and he writes a lot of books about independent film marketing and distribution, and I've used his books personally when I teach film students, so I'm a big fan of his. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'll ask you more questions about what you do after. Hank, next to you, is a television writer, producer, currently working on Ash versus Evil Dead on Starz. Shannon's a big fan. Anyone see that? On Starz? Woohoo! next to, he's worked on a lot
Two
of.
is pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
I'd say,
It's actually,
Awesome.
it's pretty good.
and you can get it on demand. You don't have to have
can get it on
stars.
demand.
There you go. Kaj, next to you, is a producer, journalist, and correspondent currently for Vice News, but he worked at Current TV, he's worked for MSNBC, he's worked for CNN, doing some stories that other people might not want to tackle. You are there, and we'll talk about that. And Josh Levine, next to you, calls himself an entertainment and technology marketing writer, producer, and creative director, and he's currently working for Rovi, correct? And Dennis at Adobe. What do you do for Adobe specifically?
Oh my gosh, I did work for our. I'm based in New York, and I used to work in the broadcast space, so working with the networks and the media companies, and you can imagine there's a huge number in New York, just like there are in LA. But I recently moved over to the content business. So Adobe has something called Adobe Stock, and so if you're making content with our applications, are offering to augment your content with microstock and royalty-free kind of content. So I just actually moved over to that like maybe 10 days ago.
Wow. Any independent filmmakers out there, that's a really good thing to know. Has anybody used Adobe for that in the past?
Well, if we said Adobe in general, I think most hands would go up. Stock,
Well, I
less
just
so.
meant
We're just
the
getting
stock.
started.
Yeah. All right, you're going to take on Getty. I like it. Okay, I'm just going to go through the panel, and at any time, if anyone in the audience has a question, you're welcome to break in. It's a free-flow, open discussion. Everybody cool with that? Okay. So I'd love to know how, this is especially for the students out there, what's your background, education, and training, and what led you to the current work that you do now? And anybody can start, or we can start in order. What do you care? This is a democratic republic. I guess I'll have the final decision, but you guys can decide. And then I'll
Enlightened
veto
dictatorship
it.
is
Yeah.
far and away the best form of
I'll
government.
veto if I don't like it, though. Oh, Kaj, thank you. You're starting. That's wonderful.
Never again volunteer yourself. Okay, well, I'm probably like far and away the worst person on this panel to start with because I have a very a-traditional television
I know.
background. I came to TV and media via a really circuitous path, which I probably would not recommend you take. I was a naval officer. I spent 7 years on active duty and like deployed a bunch in the global war on terror, and then I transitioned to media. So, unless
Sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
the global war on terror is very much like the media business.
that is true. That is true.
Ah, wag the
Cutthroat,
dog. Wag the
relentless, no
dog.
mercy.
Basically,
Stakes are that high.
I've been fighting the good fight for 2 decades, right?
Yes.
But I think what is germane from that experience for people who are aspiring to be in this industry is, people ask me all the time, like, how do I become like a war correspondent or whatever? How do I become XYZ in the media field? And I think there is some value in coming to the industry with some domain of expertise prior to entering the industry. And that sometimes can allow you to leapfrog into a position to have more impact, right? So I came with this like large domain of national security expertise. I was able to parlay that into a media job. So my first job, as Simone mentioned, was at Current TV. This was a brand new television network that hadn't even launched yet, and they needed a correspondent to go to Iraq, and they didn't have one, right? And I was just getting off of active duty. I had a friend who was like the assistant to the assistant of the president of programming, which basically means he like got him sushi or something, right? It's also another life lesson in media, which is the only real way to get ahead is nepotism, right? Have a friend on the inside. But you have someone on the inside that advocates for you, and then it allowed me, because of my military experience, like I just gotten back from Afghanistan, to then go to Afghanistan and sort of cover it from a different vantage point. And then from there I was able to forge a more traditional path. But I think if you want to become a TV host, like go be a carpenter first. Do something, right? So this is the Adam Carolla model, right? Have something that you're good at and that you know, and then you can relate that experience to what you do henceforth.
Anybody else have thoughts? I know 3 of you I know personally from our own backgrounds in education. We went to school together, but John?
I'll jump in. I mean, I went to UCLA Film School, but that was after I kind of jumped into doing documentary work by just jumping in. I basically interned at a punk rock documentary group in San Francisco, and the first day I showed up, they gave me a broom to sweep floors, and 6 months later I was shooting punk rock bands, and you know, this is a little bit back in the day, but, and I do, you know, in terms of like how you can kind of change, if you don't have friends in the business, the easiest way to create friends in the business is to go out and intern, you know, and to intern, and I teach this stuff at Cal, I now teach at CalArts, so, you know, since this is for students, I would just say the best thing to do, what I actually recommend is pick the 5 people that you want to be, right? And then find a way to contact them and say you love them and you want to work for them and you'll work your ass off for them, because everyone wants to hear that. Both of those things, that you love them and you want to work their ass off, and then go work for them, and then learn how to be that person, and be that person, and then you have a connection in the industry.
And
So.
just so the Cal State students know, our program has an internship program, and we currently have free housing spots available for the summer for those who are not based in LA right now. So,
And I'm actually still looking for interns, so.
are you kidding?
Yeah, anyway, so, but that's another story.
I hope you
So-
brought cards.
I did bring cards.
Good.
So anyway, so I became a filmmaker, and then just to get to where I'm at now, I released a documentary about graffiti all over the world at Tribeca in '07, right when the market was collapsing. So I released the film myself in a hybrid fashion.
And that was Bomb It, correct?
Bomb It, yeah, not vomit, which many
Bomb
people-
with a
Bomb
B.
It with a B, and so I took it out in a hybrid fashion, and someone said I should write about it because they hadn't seen anyone do what I was doing, and so I started writing some articles. Then people encouraged me to write a book. I wrote a book, which happened to be the first book about doing it in this manner. And then from that, I thought I was just going to go back to making films, but so many people came to me wanting me to talk about it and help them with their films. Now that's basically what I do full-time, is help filmmakers with their distribution and marketing strategies, and I'm finally now taking the leap into actually supervising releases and helping filmmakers, you know, in a kind of different way where I'm not like a full service company and I'm not a distributor, but I kind of like work with filmmakers to make it work for them, kind of a thing.
So would you call yourself a producer of marketing and
yes.
distribution?
Yeah, and in the book I created this term called a producer of marketing and distribution, which is a new crew position which has kind of now been taking off, along with the other term called impact producer. And so, which to me, and the reason I created that term is that so people would train to be that person and potentially get jobs. So basically, if you're interested in doing that, that's the kind of intern I'm looking for. Just hint, 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 everyone all over California, if you're willing to
And
come to Los Angeles.
in my opinion, it's like if you want to join a band, learn the drums or the bass, not the guitar, because everybody wants to be a guitar player. Everybody needs a good bass player and drummer. Some people are nodding their heads. Everybody needs right now, in indie film especially, a good marketing and distribution specific expert. And it's something I do as well for filmmakers, and I'm really a fan of what John teaches and writes about. And I teach film students, you shouldn't even shoot something unless you have a marketing and distribution plan in place and know who your target market is. You don't create something and say, it's done, now do something with it.
Unless you make it for very little money that you know you can lose, and you're okay with losing that money.
Right.
And then if you're okay,
You're
if you're
an heiress.
passionate about something and have to tell a story, you know, and you don't know what the audience is and you don't know if it's going to sell, then just be prepared. Just know that the money that you're putting into it and asking other people, you might just not get back. So I won't say what you just said because I don't want to block anyone's passion, but just be realistic about what the marketplace is out there, which is really super difficult.
I think I'm going to add that to my bio, passion blocker. I'm kidding. I actually agree with you.
I didn't really mean it like that.
I know, John, I'm teasing. Thank you for giving us that background. Hank, now I know you from, we went to college together, and I don't recall you wanting a career
No.
in writing for television
I was,
back in college.
I was a political science sociology major in college, and when it was time to graduate, I didn't know what to do with that, and I started watching a lot of movies and not even that much TV, and I ended up going to grad school in Chicago, where we went to undergrad. And then after that, I kind of through school connections, I started working on commercials, doing anything I could to get my foot in the door. Worked on, I actually worked on a mayonnaise commercial. I worked on whatever was in Chicago at the time as a PA. I ended up moving up the ladder, being a production coordinator, moving up to a production supervisor, moving up to production manager in my late 20s, and realizing I could keep doing this job, and I never really liked doing production work. I wanted to be on the creative side. I didn't want to be on the production side. So in my late 20s, I basically said, I got to stop taking jobs doing this and start over. And I went back to basically being an assistant. Another connection through college got me an assistant. I actually worked for Luke Perry as his assistant for a while, and it actually opened a lot of doors for me in the television world. And eventually that led to me getting a job on Nip Tuck, which was a great position because the door kind of closed behind me in the writer's room, and I got to write on the second season, became a staff member, producer in the third season, got to direct some episodes, and it kind of started from there. So it was for me, it was a very conscious choice to say, you know what, my track has gotten a little off from where I want it to be. If I don't take this chance and redirect myself now, it's going to be harder and harder the longer I wait. And so it took me a lot longer in some regards than a lot of TV writers who can get their start in their 20s and know they want to do that. But you know, this is the way it happened for me. So.
But would you not say that some of that early work gave you either greater knowledge or appreciation of
absolutely.
what everybody else is doing in your world?
Very few television writers know how, know what to do on a set. And, I did a lot of other jobs as well. I did on-set dressing and I did craft service. And, it's like, it really gave me an appreciation for how hard crews work. And, these are 60, 100, 200 person crews. These are big shows. And to kind of feel comfortable in that setting and know what everyone does and know what everyone's role is was very informative in how I write, and also how to, because writers in television and movies can feel very separate and segregated from the crew and feel elitist in some ways. We write it, you just do it. You bring it to the screen, but it starts with us. And it really taught me the appreciation of how much they are a part of the creative process and how important it is to make everyone feel like, we're going into war together, really, and we all have to be on the same page, and we have to be on the same team, and we have to all feel like we're going towards the same goal.
A lot of what he was talking about reminds me a little bit of your story, if you want to elaborate.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in fabulous Orange County, California, and I also non-traditionally went, after high school, I went to community college, Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, where I was a theater geek and found my passion for directing there. And I had the good fortune of faculty that gave us enough rope to hang ourselves with. The only rule was they couldn't get fired for what we did. And also had a teacher who was very insistent on saying to us, if this is not what you want to do, if there's anything else in this world that you want to do that. Because you will not make it in this business, based on just ambition alone. It has to be a vocation, it has to be your passion. And then from there, because the state of California has such a great education system in terms of the college system, I went from Orange Coast College and I finished all of my lower division work, and I transferred to Cal State Long Beach as an English education major with an emphasis on poetry. It's very fancy. And from there, I had no intent, I was going to be a high school teacher. And when
I
I
did
got
not know that.
yeah, I passed the CBEST test, and I was on track to become a high school teacher until I actually had to teach a day of high school.
Oh, God. What happened on that day?
I said, this is definitely for other people.
Wow.
Because it does take a lot of vocational passion to be a high school teacher. So in the interim, I was also, my husband, who's a writer, he and I were working with some friends, and we started our own theater company, which became a really successful storefront theater company in Orange County. And from there, I worked at South Coast Repertory Theater. I worked at the Orange County Performing Arts Center, and now it's known as Segerstrom Center. I decided that if I was going to be a successful theater director, I needed to further my education. So I applied to only one grad school, and that was the Yale School of Drama, and got in with 2 other people. And from there, I realized what I really wanted to do was direct sitcoms. So.
Well, it
but-
didn't happen that quickly.
Well, no,
Like the-
actually, my first year in Ben Mordecai's
Really?
class, we had this amazing director, Assad Kalata, who is
That's
instrumental in creating shows like The Facts of Life, and he worked on Growing Pains, and he worked on all these amazing 80s sitcoms, and I was in Family Ties and stuff like that. So from there, he said, have you ever considered directing for television? And I was like, isn't that selling out for a theater director? And he was so sweet, and he said, no, actually, I direct a new play every week. And it never occurred to me that that's what directing could be globally. And I grew up in freaking Orange County, dude. And like, I was like at the footsteps of Los Angeles.
But did he say that when you were sitting with him in his mansion?
No, we were sitting
I've
at a
been
Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf in Studio City, who had not attended a Yale alumni program. But anyway, that being said, I graduated, and I had 2 choices. I could go to New York and start over again as a theater director, or I could come back to Southern California where my family was. And my father-in-law passed away while we were at school, and my dad was suffering from early stages of Alzheimer's, and it made sense to me to come back to Southern California. So from there, just to kind of compress everything, I decided to take full advantage of the alumni at Yale who were working in film and television. Some names like Jim Burrows and Steve Zuckerman and Steve Robman and these other guys who were like graduates of the directing program. And I nervously and got over my fear and had to call every single one of them and say, you don't know me, but I just graduated and I'm looking to be in your industry. And I literally had one person say to me, are you insane? And I said, oh, no, what? And he said, you can't just show up in Los Angeles and be a sitcom director. And I was like, well, why? He's like, you haven't done anything. You haven't done Broadway. Have you done anything? Do you have a manager? Do you have an agent? And I was like, no. And then, but I did
So
stuff.
how did you get your foot in the door?
I met Lee Shalit Schemmel, who I had reached out to, who had nothing to do with Yale, nothing to do with anything. I knew her from theater, and she was a very successful comedy director, and she took me under her wing and let me be mentored by her for 3 years.
So you
which
shadowed her?
I
What
got
did you
her
do?
coffee, I schlepped her stuff, I showed up before she got there.
3 years.
And I was the last one to leave. And for 3 years, I stuck by that woman's side and just sucked up everything I possibly could. like a
Postgraduate
sponge.
school.
Yeah.
So
And I made.
we're not talking 22 years old.
No,
here.
and in the meantime, I waited tables, which is why I made the table waiting joke earlier. I waited tables. So here I am with an MFA from Yale, and I'm waiting tables in a coffee house in Santa Ana. But the point being, I didn't care. I was willing to go to any lengths to do what I needed to do. And then this week is actually the 10-year anniversary of directing my first episode of television.
Really?
So,
Congratulations.
yeah, so it was good. But from there, she directed the pilot of Hannah Montana. I got hooked in with that. They offered me an episode to direct, and
Here we are.
I became the acting coach on the show in the meantime because they needed an acting coach, and I found out I was pregnant and needed a job.
Yeah. Insurance.
So no insurance, but
Really?
still but more pay to afford insurance to have a baby,
Oh,
pay
baby.
rent.
So I take away from a lot of your stories in different ways. I call it the suck it up quotient. Is that okay to say on stream, live stream? You know, do what you got to do to be where you want to be, and with a smile, be the first person there and the last person to leave, and always ask, what do you need? What can I do? What do you need? And ask. If you don't ask, you don't receive. Will you help me? If you're too nervous to ask, again, it's not an industry where you can be shy or reticent. So thank you for sharing that. Josh, tell us about your interesting journey since student days.
You're setting the bar pretty high there.
Hi.
Let's see, as a student with Hank and Simone, I graduated with a degree in radio, television, and film, and people often ask, well, what did you study? And I say beer. Yeah, I got out at Northwestern with I'm an adult now, what do I do? And wound up with a job in motion picture marketing and advertising, which to me it seemed like nobody comes out to Hollywood and says, I want to make trailers for a living. I mean, maybe that's changed now with the internet and everybody's looking at trailers and everybody does their best in a world. But at the time, it was kind of a catch-all for people who didn't know what they wanted to do with their lives. And they're like failed people who came out here to be directors or actors or writers. And
I thought that was law school. You're saying it. Oh, okay. Keep going. It's true.
But now you threw me off with the whole
Sorry.
law school thing.
I just
Where was
remember
that?
clearly you got a cool gig working on a certain movie right
Before graduation,
Yes.
yeah.
With
Yeah,
a certain
I worked,
famous director.
I worked on the Doors movie with Oliver Stone. And of course, at the time, it was the early 90s, and I was into grunge, and I had hair down past my shoulders, and I was working as a PA in the editing room, and everywhere I went, people would go like, hey, you kind of look like Jim Morrison, you know. But to your point about, you know, being the first one there and the last one to leave, and what can I do and how can I be helpful, I took like fall quarter from my senior year off to work on that movie. And like, what an amazing opportunity. I haven't even graduated yet. I'm working with Oliver Stone side by side. I could not wait to get back to school where the beer was. You know,
Why is that?
Because I wasn't really focused or driven or passionate about what I was doing. It's sort of like what not to do. Like I was just like, hey, can I get out of here yet? Can I go home? You know? And here's this amazing opportunity, right? So yeah, exactly to your point. Like be there, show up, you know, soak it up, suck it up. So of course, when I graduated and they were making JFK, they were like, Josh, who? Yeah, so I wound up in motion picture marketing. From there, I started copywriting, producing, client relations, and wound up as a creative director as an advertising boutique, motion picture marketing, advertising boutique. And yeah, if you really don't want to have a life, get into advertising.
Yeah, my brother worked in advertising.
Yeah, there's, you know, because at 3 in the morning when that client calls and says, can we trim that shot by 2 frames? Have to redeliver everything, because that's going to change the whole marketing campaign right there. Those 2 frames.
But yet you do it anyway, don't you?
Oh yeah, with a big smile on your face too. Oh, of course. That's brilliant. That's a brilliant move. That's definitely going to be the way to go. Yeah, I didn't want to be on my deathbed selling bad DVDs to people, you know. So I started getting more into writing, and
You're working on a book, aren't you?
yeah, I am almost done with my first novel.
Really?
10 years later. Yeah, also writing fiction. Well, they say why are poets happier than fiction writers? Because poets know they're not going to make any money.
I say something similar about being a theater major. It's like I survived 2 recessions because I already knew I wouldn't be employed. So it's a certain mentality you have to have.
I like ramen.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, as far as like writing goes, I always told people I was a writer, and then I, go to a party or go see some live music, and people would, oh, you're a writer. And yeah, I was a writer who wasn't writing, which was basically nothing. So it's like, if you want to do something, you have to do it every day. And there's no excuse.
Especially writing.
Especially writing. I mean, what are you doing today to get to where you want to be? And do it.
Great piece of advice. And certainly not least, I'd love to hear how you got to where. No, I really
Only
would.
because that's right, because I'm the only one here that you don't know.
No, that's true, but they
Well,
don't know any of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Nepotism,
No, it's all good.
told you.
I've had a bit of a different, like a lot of people here, a bit of a different path, and I always knew kind of I had both an interest in doing the vendor side, so more of your traditional business side. So I'm with Adobe, a very big software company, but I always was really connected to the creative side. So I was taking piano lessons from age 7. I studied with a Pulitzer Prize winning composer. And I got a maybe some of you would agree, a similarly useless degree in music. And my parent, you got to give your parents a lot of credit. If they let you go do some of these majors, like a music major, my parents said, hey, that's cool. You may not make a lot of money, but if that's what you want, we'll support you. And so I give them a ton of credit in that respect, that they were able to kind of have that faith that it worked out. And so, I started out saying I'm going to be a rock and roll music star and the whole thing, and realized that, I got married, started having kids, and it's like, hey, I have a path I have to get to, and let's see, where we can kind of go with this. And so I've kind of moved around between just different, both video and then audio, and then, I've been with Adobe for 10 years. But the thing that I would say is a big difference between, when I was in college, we didn't have, not everyone went to college. I think everyone, how many people are going to go for their MBA, just out of curiosity? MBA, yeah. A lot of,
Yeah, it was a
so on my side, if you're going, the creative / business side, getting an MBA is almost like a foregone conclusion at this point. And I think, when I talk to my kids, it's like, I went into college getting a music degree because I wanted to. I didn't think about what that was going to mean for my life and how it was going to end up. And I was very it's been great. It's turned out terrific. And I think that there's this aspect that things will work out in the end, and echoing what everyone else said here is like, you have to be the first one in, you have to put all the work in, you have to have a purpose, a goal, and be driven. But for me, it's like, I tell my kids, I have one in college, 2 in high school, and one's going to be in high school next year. So I'm like, you kind of have to know what you want to do by the time you're done with high school. So if it's the creative side of the business, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to get involved with? The only thing I would just add to, my background, I think one of the neat things for me is I like being on the creative software side. I've been able to have, direct input into how a lot of the Adobe products have developed, things like Photoshop and Premiere, and can even point to certain features that, were really instrumental because I had some input and say into those things. But the best thing is I'm able to deal with great creatives of all different kind of walks of life. So I'm coming more from the New York side, but every major, TV headquarters is there, within a few square miles of each other. And being able to sit down with the business stakeholders and saying, hey, this is why you need to do this and that, and then the same day, go down to the editors, sit in the dark room with the toys and the art and the guitars hanging on the wall, doing all that kind of great stuff, and talk about editing and how we're going to do this title sequence and how you can use After Effects to kind of realize your vision. It's a great path for those people who want to do it. A little bit different than a lot of the people here, but it's a lot of fun.
I don't know, I would think someone who has a background making their own independent projects would do well in your situation because they'll have a knowledge and understanding of everything as well, you know, and you can have a conversation with creatives. You understand all the aspects, even if you want to be more on the business side, a producer in management and executive. Correct?
Yeah, and I've got to meet, a terrific number of people, screenwriters, producers, executives, shooters, editors, directors, whole production crews, and you get to go to some great places. You get to see, ILM, Pixar, and everything.
Yeah, I want to kind of underscore what Dennis said because it's interesting. We have this like kind of Horatio Alger mythology, like, hey, you just like work hard and you put your time in, and it's all going to work. But like in some ways, that is what economists would call necessary but not sufficient. Like the hard work is an absolute given, but if you really sort of empirically, like just listening to everybody on this panel, like I don't know, like I'm not a math major, but I think there's like at least 4 Ivy League master's degrees on the panel and maybe an MBA or something floating about, right? So empirically, if you look at that, like, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that like you have to go to Yale or Harvard to be successful in this business, but it does mean that the value of that experience is kind of the relationship capital that you take away from it. And
Exactly.
like we're all a product of our influences to a very large degree. There's kind of like what I call like this great Maginot dividing line in this town between people who are actually making shit and people who are just talking about making shit. Like to me, that's the whole town, right? You're either like at the coffee shop talking about your screenplay or like you're in production doing it, right? That's the great dividing line. And in large part, that is determined and influenced by who your influences are and who you hang out with, so. Yeah.
Right, so the bottom line being, if you're a student and you're at a university, the people around you, these are people I went to college with. I'm not going to say when, but I did, and I'm still in touch with them and able to ask them, hey, would you do something with me? You're doing all these great things in the industry. And they will, because what I say to my students when I'm teaching is, be the person you want to work with, or don't be an ass. And then I follow it with something else, because this world is very small, even though it seems large, the world of entertainment, arts, however you want to call it, and you want to be that person that people want to work with. And you want to create those connections while you're in school. They might be the people you start a production company with, and or like things that you both did, the alumni circuit. And remember, the Cal State system, if you are a Cal State student, is the largest public university system in the world. I cannot believe the people who went through this system working in the industry. People you don't, yes, a lot of famous people you're like, you went? Kevin Costner, what? Just random, but a lot of executives in the industry. And, why not ask them to help you in the right way? Why not ask for their support? They are into, I find most of them are really lovely about where they want to school and helping campuses. I bring those people to campuses, so I know. So I love that everybody pretty much seconded that idea. Did you have more thoughts on ideas, advice for people trying to get their foot in the door? Anybody can
Well, I
jump
would
in.
just kind of continue that thought. And although I greatly took advantage of the connections I got through my college experience, I think there's kind of endless resources that you don't have to only use your alumni connections to get. There's so many different ways to get involved. Say you're in LA and you want to be a TV writer, you can take classes that are $600 at UCLA Extension, and those will be people that move up in the business with you if you keep in touch with them. There's so many different ways. You can start a writers group, and those people will keep working in the business if they're serious about it like you are. And there's endless events like this where you meet people at these events and you keep in touch with them, and it's so easy to keep in touch with people now that's how you do it. Because really, the bottom line is networking. You have to network in this business, and especially TV writing, because and a lot of parts of the business, because really this is a project-based business. So you only are employed as long as that project is going. And so I'm out of work all the time. I was out of work for 13 months last year. I worked the whole time. I didn't get paid for it. Then I got 2 jobs at once. But it's like you have to always be networking. You have to always be talking to people. You have to always be out meeting people. And you have to be thick-skinned enough to take rejection and persevere long enough to want to do it and be passionate about it to stick with it. And one thing, when I talk to people about staying in the business or being successful in the business, I say there's really two things, and one of them is what Simone said, which is don't be an asshole. If you're someone who people like to be around, that's more important than even having skill. It really is, because as a TV writer, I spend 10 hours a day hanging out, sitting in a writer's room around a table with 10 other writers, and we shoot the shit most of the time, and maybe 20 minutes of the day we work. But it's like, it's all about hanging out with those people,
Anybody
and
from
you're
a
not going to
studio
hire.
in here?
No.
It's all about hanging out with people. It's not about, and you want to hang out with people you like. And so they're going to hire people. Oh, I like it. He's got a good energy. He's got a positive attitude. He wants to work. So don't be an asshole, and then persevere. The other people, when I arrived in Hollywood, and I was 26, and I really knew nobody, I kind of stuck with it. And I just kept taking whatever job came my way. And there's a lot of other people that came with me about the same time. And they probably would have been as successful as I am or more successful if they just stayed with it. But you just kind of have to weather the downtimes and really want to do it, because it is a lot easier to make money or be successful in a lot of other businesses.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Any questions from the audience? Go for it. I'll repeat it so everybody can hear.
So I graduated from college 20-something years ago, and this is my second career. Obviously, I'm not going to become an intern, because you can't if you're not a student. So, but I have made 2 films. I've continued with Young Independent Women in Development, etc., these networking groups. But actually having meaningful shadowing experience rather than simply getting coffee, which I'm not opposed to. It's just looking for a meaningful opportunity. What would you suggest?
Shannon, I know you have.
I know, am I wrong to assume that you've also applied for the ABC DGA Women's Directing Program, or the HBO program, or the Warner Brothers
I
program?
see her pen moving.
Because they're, for ill or for good, there is a lot of focus on diversity right now. And there are lots of programs that are available now to help
Women.
give people a leg up. So I can tell you, Sony has a program, and you guys jump in if you know.
ABC
Because I know they also have
Television.
these for writers programs.
Yeah, there's
Well,
tons
we-
of diversity programs
Yeah.
for writers as well, pretty much
But-
at every studio.
Anyway, Sony, Warner Brothers, DGA, ABC, HBO.
Disney ABC Television has an inclusion program for writers.
Yeah, and some of them, it requires exactly what you say, which is proof of work. And I would also say the AFI Women's Program, you have to fundraise for your own film, but you get access, and that's the most important thing. And of course, I'm a 46-year-old woman, but I tell you what, I have sat on a set despite 10 years of experience to watch somebody direct and shadow them just to get them to see my face and know that I'm willing. And also, I'll tell you one thing right now. Sometimes I can tell you, I don't know shit. You know what I mean? What I love about being in this business is because, and this is a digital conference, the way that television and film is moving into new frontiers or old frontiers that look new. You know what I mean? By which I mean, these things have been around forever, but now all of a sudden it's a big deal. But my point is,
Virtual reality?
VR, that kind of stuff. But my point is, there are so many more outlets now than there used to be. And it seems to me that there are so many more opportunities that should be granted. But those programs I would start with, especially since you have experience. And a meaningful shadowing experience doesn't exist.
And you want to work in television? Is that, or film?
Those are all for television, by the way,
Yeah.
although Sony and Warner Brothers does have a directing for film program.
Okay. So this lady has a lot of information for you. I'm just.
Well, that's the information. I mean, honestly, for everybody, that's the
She knows
information that I
what I
have.
And as we kind of mentioned, there's a lot of programs like that for TV writers as well. And if you get into a diversity program at any of these studios, they want to place you on a TV show, and the show's budget does not pay for you, but you get paid for up to 2 years. So the show will be like, great, we'll take another writer. It doesn't come out of our budget for 2 years.
Right.
And so you really get a chance to cut your teeth and learn how to do the job before you need to kind of look up for a job.
There's
on your
chairs right up here, you guys. You don't have to be shy. if you-
Someone's a director. Speaking of director, what about independent filmmaking and how you got your start and your advice to students?
I got my start in kind of odd ways. I mean, again, coming out of film school, I wrote a script, almost got it made, ended up producing a film, and then just happened to, through a series of events, I'd never directed a music video before, but I had made these weird short films in college, and so Film Threat, Trent Reznor called up Film Threat looking for someone who had directed music videos before, and they sent over a few filmmakers' work, one of which was mine, and I'm the one who got chosen. So I started doing music videos after that, and I did about 20 of them until I got really sick of it. And one thing in Hollywood, there tend to be these hamster wheels that you can get on because they're comfortable hamster wheels that, like, there's food right there, and you are working, and you think you know what you think you're doing what you want to do. Because you're getting paid, and you're working in film, and it's great. And one of the editors said that, well, the only, you want to direct, and I see all you guys come through that only want to direct, features, that is, and it's like the only people I see succeed stop cold turkey. And basically, in each of my career changes, I found that, and just like you did, you stop cold turkey being a production manager, you kind of have to, there's going to be times when you have a job and you're on a certain path, and then you realize, oh my God, this isn't really what I wanted to do, and you kind of have to go full turkey and agree that I'm not going to take that money anymore because I really want to do this. And so that's when I sat down and wrote a script, raised money for it, directed my first feature, ended up doing another film kind of simultaneously with that, then ended up getting some writing gigs in Hollywood based on those films, and and that was another hamster wheel because there's script writing and also pitching writing is another hamster wheel, as you've probably experienced. And I got sick of that, and I said, fuck, I'm just going to make another film, and that's when I went out and made Bomb It. And one of the things in film, especially as digital technology has grown up, you can just go out and make something, and so, but it is good to have some skills, to have a sense of what you're doing, have a sense of the audience. If you want to, my best piece of advice would be, if you're wanting to do something that's kind of successful, is to find something that you love to do in in a niche that has not been served by media before. Is that if you happen to make a film about a swimming champion, which is this film called Touch the Wall, which did $1 million box office for a documentary, that audience of swimmers hadn't been touched before. So if you can figure out a niche, for a while it was pot movies. Like, people weren't making documentaries about pot, and there was a zillion of them, and they made tons of money. But that's a more commercial way of doing it. The thing that's really interesting now is that there's so many avenues in. Like, back in my day, it was like commercials, music videos. I mean, I think some of you guys, and then if you could possibly break into television or film, now there's like a zillion things like short form programming, like what Vice is doing. There's all different kinds of episodic, there's VR, there's so many different ways in. One thing in terms of independent that I see some of my former students at CalArts doing, and I think is a really smart thing, is people forming these little production collectives and doing kind of like any different kind of work, because there are so many different kinds of work out there now, producing commercials and music videos and short form episodic and and then feature films. There's this one company called Nonetheless, and they had like a web series on MTV, and then they produced a film that was at Sundance, and then they do production services, and they do all these different jack of all trades. And I think there's actually a term for it, kind of, as these individuals who do this, called even a predator, where they actually are people who go out and shoot and edit and kind of like do everything to create short form content. And so,
Who coined that term?
I don't know.
That's
I thought
horrible.
one of
You know?
What?
Yeah,
Cash did.
we hired Predators like way back in the day, 2005,
But-
producer editor.
But that sounds a lot like what what broadcasting has become. You have to be your own producer.
yeah, one-man band.
One-man
stuff, yeah,
band.
sure.
Yeah.
I think there was a question out here.
Producer.
All right.
Oh, okay.
We have a question from Twitter from one of our web viewers. Ah. What is Vice looking for? And please tell me, how can I work there? Kaj?
What is Vice looking for? I know we're transforming news and information for young people, right? That's what we're trying to do. What we're looking for is good, high quality content and people, and we hope we have this, lofty ambition and aspiration of transforming the media landscape. Like, if it's in terms of like tactilely, like what are we looking for? All kinds of things, because we're like, I like to call us like one of the first really truly modern media companies, in that we have a robust digital platform. We have a linear cable network called Viceland that we just launched. We have a premiere show on HBO on Friday nights. But I was thinking back to what everybody's talking about. I think it's also important to remember that like one of the perils, one of the curses and blessings of this industry is that it is somewhat a meritocracy, right? So like you actually don't need a formal education. You can pick up like your cell phone and you can like cut a video on Premiere or whatever, any of the Adobe products, right? And you can make something, right? But like most of it's crap, right? Like don't make crap. that's the real problem. And not everybody is going to be good or great at this industry, right? It's still like trying to play for the NFL. It always amazes me that people ask, people will watch the NFL every Sunday, but not that many people are like, oh, I want to go play in the NFL. They think because they can watch something on TV, like they can go make it. Like it's really hard, right? And it's so by that measure, like you need all of those things like hustle and good ideas and all of that stuff. So look, we're always looking for good people and content, but I think the larger part is to think about filmmaking like an entrepreneurial model, right? Making a film is an entrepreneurial endeavor. And I went surfing with a VC buddy of mine the other day, and he said, listen, I give millions of dollars away, and I invest in really smart people with really good ideas every day, and I fully expect 70% of them to go to zero, right? So you could have a really good film idea, and be really smart, or a really good media idea and be really smart, and you have to be brutally aware of the reality of the situation. There's this thing in psychology called the Stockdale paradox, and it says that you have to be brutally realistic about your situation, but the paradox is that you still have to remain optimistic. Yeah. So the brutal reality is that this is an extraordinarily tough industry, and it's extraordinarily difficult to pierce through all of the white noise out there that John was describing, right? Because of this content distribution, explosion of content. So that's the bad news. But in order to be successful, you have to retain some optimism that you're going to be part of the 1% here.
I would say in tech, Dennis, that there is more of, I wish they would teach us in kindergarten, the fail upwards model. Everybody should fail and fail a lot and keep failing over and over. In fact, I've been involved with digital media startup companies, and they don't want to talk to you unless you've had a few failed digital media startup companies, so they do like to talk to me, because I have had a few failed startup companies. But somehow that doesn't work so well in Hollywood. They don't adopt that model.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I mean, there's big bucks in true Hollywood, right? So I have some counterparts that are based out on the West Coast and deal specifically with Hollywood and big budget films. And, Adobe, with regards to Premiere, has been involved with a couple of great films. So Hail Caesar, Deadpool, and Gone Girl are all just three very recent ones. And you need to have, there's just too much money. And I wanted to come back to the point that he made. I would absolutely agree that you have to have talent. You just, there's so I'm now in the stock business, right? So I'm like,
He
I'll
lives
take,
in New York.
What's that?
You,
What'd you
you
say?
come to Hollywood a lot, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I was just checking.
Yeah. So anyone can go shoot and anyone can go edit, right? But there is still a craft in terms of storytelling. And actually, with the VR, it's like, hey, it's more of an experience. It's a difficult as a narrative telling device. I mean, you got to tell a story. You got to have your craft. I mean, if you're going to be an editor or related to that, you got to practice. You got to learn how to tell that story. And then the other thing for Vice, having worked with Vice over in Brooklyn, I think the other thing for that person in San Francisco, it's like they really want ideas. Like what I've seen in Vice in Brooklyn, it's like, hey, I'm really thinking about going out to seeing what's happening out in East Hauppauge or Islip where Billy Joel is or something like that. And here's the story angle. And if it's an interesting idea, they'll be like, okay, go do that. And they let you do that. That may be
Ideas.
changing, though.
No, that's true. That's the beauty of Vice, right? Like, so I come from conventional television and conventional news. I was at CNN prior to this, right? And the ethos there is much more conservative, right?
Right.
The ethos at Vice, which is extraordinary, is basically when I came on board, and Shane Smith said to me in so many words, what's the wildest idea you can come up with,
Right.
and how quickly can you go execute it?
Yeah.
And what was it?
I
Are you allowed
I did
to-
some crazy.
They have an
Yeah,
not
yeah.
safe for
I
work
see it.
section, so you better be careful.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
I won't even go
I don't
there.
want to promote myself.
Yeah. No, okay. We have a question over here.
My name's April. I am a college senior at Cal State Fullerton, and my question is, are there industry-wide hard skills that you feel like college students should have before coming out to the
The question, she's a Cal State Fullerton student who'd like to know if there are hard skills that students coming out and wanting to enter the workforce should have.
Humility is a hard skill, I would say. I'm only half joking, but like we talked about, I agree. Being willing to mop the floor is not going to get you, you have to have the talent to back it up. But the other thing I would say, and I had to learn this the hard way, is money management skills. Because, as was pointed out, when you're not working for 13 months and you're not saving, you know what I mean? I had to learn how to save for those 6-8 months of time when I'm not working. So learning how to have really hard money management skills as a creative person is something that I wish I had learned.
Any other thoughts?
And writing skills,
Oh, yeah.
you have to be good at communicating.
All different kinds of writing.
Yeah, you have to be good at presenting yourself clearly.
Writing and in person.
Yeah.
I'd say you have to know how to present yourself.
Pitching, yeah.
Pitching, it's whatever that means in a sense, you have to be able to communicate an idea succinctly in a way that someone's going to be interested in it. Plus you need an interesting idea to start with, but you also have to be able to communicate it. Also, with the writing, even email writing skills, how to write a short email that someone when they open it isn't 8 paragraphs long and someone's eyes are going to roll over and bleed and just stick it away, something that's very short and to the point, why is this? Just those kind of very practical skills. And then other than those depends on what kind of job you want to do, then I would say there aren't necessarily super industry-wide. It depends on what you want. If you want to be a writer, there's certain things. If you want to be an editor, certain thing,
Right.
I would say editing skills across the board would probably place some value in the early part of your career. It might allow you to short circuit spending thousands of hours in the edit bay as a producer looking over somebody's shoulder, but and also just doing your own nascent projects and being able to create your own little opus and put your stamp on them. It probably wouldn't hurt even if you don't want to be an editor ultimately.
And I think it's been echoed here a little bit, is if you have a chance to be able to participate in productions on almost every kind of level, to understand the jobs of what everyone's doing helps you to kind of know what's happening and what really needs to be done and how, so that you're not really kind of snowed by someone saying, oh, it has to be this way, and you go, no, I know it can be done this, like having an understanding of the craft, like overall, a little bit of every different craft in a sense.
Josh, you had something?
Yeah, I'd also say that know how to kill your babies, as they say. Like, don't become so attached to your creative output that it's like, we've been raised by parents that say, oh, everything you do is just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, sorry, it's just not going to be that way. And I think it's the difference between being an amateur and a professional. Like, the amateur does it for the love, and it's amazing, it's so great. Professional does it to their best capability, goes home at night, gets a good night's sleep, says, this is what I was able to do, I did my best, and then pick it up the next day.
Nice. Well, we are at time. Is there one brief question anybody has?
I had one more thing to add, if I may, and I think it kind of echoes back to something Cash said at the beginning, and that is to have a point of view. I think having talent's great, but you need to have a perspective, your own way of seeing the world. You need to bring that if you want to get your voice heard. You have to be different. And I think one way to do that is to not work in Hollywood the day after college ends, but to go out and live in the world and have an experience like joining the Navy, or teach for America, or ride trains. I don't know, but you need something. Like, I see it all the time where there's tons of TV writers looking for jobs, and it's like, well, I've been working in TV, I've done this, and then there's one guy who came in and he'll be a lawyer, or he'll be, whatever, come from outside of the town, and they're like, I want to talk to that guy, because this is someone who's got a different way of looking at things, or at least from what we're used to seeing every day here. So I'm all for saying, Hollywood's going to be here.
Yeah.
You can go out and live your life a couple years. You can go and have some great experiences, and it'll still be doing the same thing when you come back.
I would
you won't have
echo.
missed anything.
You're here, and I would say the same thing about going to graduate school, not going right to school from school. Have some life experience first. Or
But you got some
Because
stories,
it's
don't you?
timeless.
You have some stories to tell.
Great. So thank you all for coming. Let's give a hand to our esteemed speakers. Thank you, Digital Hollywood, and for allowing us to have this education summit. And thank you for coming, students.
Information.